Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this month's Georgia Healthy Farmer Mindset virtual meeting. And this month, I'm really thrilled to our top for our topic being the work of the Licensed Professional Counselors Association of Georgia, um, and having several of its members talk about their work in our ag and rural communities. It was my privilege last year to Tracy and Dottie Chambers, that I see was also on the Zoom, invited me to speak at the annual conference, and really enjoyed that, about the Georgia Agricultural Wellness Alliance and how we're trying to create a network of, not only for and of farm families, providers, faith leaders, educators, researchers that are all working to create a safe and thriving agricultural community in Georgia. And so that was a real privilege for me, and I always enjoy working with the association and members of the association. So today, very privileged to have Tracy Pace, who is president of LPCA of Georgia, and she is from Effingham County. And as I will, with all of our speakers, I will let her talk about her connection to the rural and ag communities. And she lives just a stone's throw away from where I grew up in southern Bullitt County on a farm there, and still have a lot of family members involved in that. I think my brother, who has done all the farming since for the last, I guess, 4 decades, 3, 4 decades. And after my dad hung it up, he's actually going to hang it up this year. Yeah, he said he's willing to keep going, but his knees are not. So we do know that physical stress also impacts our farmers a great deal. But from down in that area, so I was very familiar when Tracy told me where their farm was. So and also we're privileged to have Sven Legg Grady from Blairsville, Georgia, who is a licensed professional counselor, and Dr. Will Carroll from Acworth, Georgia, who is the ethics chair for LPCA of Georgia. And they'll both be presenting, and I'll let Tracy kind of coordinate who goes when, but I'm going to start with Tracy. And Tracy, welcome. Always a pleasure to see you. We run into each other at agricultural related events. I think the last one was the Sunbelt Ag Expo
Yes,
down in Moultrie
yeah.
this year, where I'm always exhibiting there for the Georgia Agricultural Wellness Alliance. So it was a pleasure to run into Tracy and to meet her husband. And so very involved in the agricultural community. I love to see that. So, Tracy, I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you for inviting the LPCA to participate in this. Uh, it's funny, not funny, but it's kind of coincidental that you were talking about your father, because some of what I'm going to talk about is the exact same thing. When I became president of the Licensed Professional Counselors Association, I made rural mental health care a priority of my presidency. And our presidency are 3 years. You go in as incoming president, and then immediate past president, and you have different jobs when doing those. And so I've really emphasized rural mental health. I live in a rural community, as John just said, but we are being crowded out by urban sprawl. I am a farmer. I'm also a licensed professional counselor. Something I wish people could understand is when you live in a rural community and there's a drought, you have to drive by these crops every single day, and you see crops dying in the field. They're not your crops. You may not know the person who planted those crops, but you know somebody is not going to get a good night's sleep tonight, and they're going to be worrying about how they're going to make it through the year. So even if you aren't a farmer, you're affected by it, because those farmers spend money at your stores. This farmers go out to your restaurants. They feel the stress. They may not be able to do what, may not be able to work because there's no farm produce to pick or to work on. So it is very important that we reach the community for this community, because they're all suffering. First, let me make it clear that the story I'm about to tell you is the family has given me permission. This is not a patient, it's a neighbor. But a couple of years ago, we had a man commit suicide because he believed that his farm was going under and he would be responsible for losing the family farm. And if you aren't a farm person, you can't, I don't think, really appreciate what it would feel like. My family's been farming, my husband's family has been farming this same piece of land for about 130 years. If we were to lose it, it felt like we'd letting our family down. Anyway, he committed suicide and his son took over after him. The man was not at risk of going broke. He was just had a lot of anxiety, and the anxiety convinced him that he was at risk. The son has taken it over. The farm is now very successful and even winning awards. And as we all know, fear can make you think irrational thoughts. The problem is when the fear is grounded in some sort of reality, and his was grounded in the reality. We were going through a lot of drought. We had some economic conditions that were making it hard. And so that fear took on a life of its own and ended up in a very horrible conclusion. When John asked me if I would talk about LPCA and some of my connections, I thought, okay, I'm just going to get up there and I'm going to tell you what LPCA is doing. So I'm going to tell you that one. But then there's another story after that. And I do thank you, John, for partnering with us. It is the only way we're going to get this done is if we all get involved in it. So of 151 of the 159 counties are considered underserved in Georgia. And that is not just mental health, but physical health. And so there are some loans and things, but how do we get the people who are majoring in those career fields out to the rural environments where there may or may not be housing, and whether they may or may not be able to afford it is a question we're all facing. 5 Georgia counties do not have a single mental health provider in that county. That means no psychiatrist, no psychologist, no LCSW, no LMFT, and no LPC. So those families not only have to work a farm, but they got to drive to get somewhere if they need care. So we have sort of been pushing this telehealth, which I don't do telehealth. I'm a little bit hard of hearing, and so I just don't do it. And I think it's hard to make a connection. But that is one way we're looking at maybe reaching some of these farm families that are in these areas where they're not being served. LPCA is focused on last in 2025 convention, as John mentioned. We had we actually solicited several farm-related classes to be taught at our convention, and John hosted one. And out of that came the idea of having a rural mental health roundtable. And that roundtable allows people who are in a rural environment, therapists in a rural environment, connect with other therapists in a rural environment, and maybe come up with some solutions that their patients are facing, or maybe some areas where we can maybe a little more advocacy for farmers and their situations. Some of the other things we've done, we've partnered with AgriSafe, and I got paper. I'm old school. I got to remind myself of this stuff, but we've partnered with AgriSafe to do the farm response. And the way we've partnered with them, it's their program, but LPCA offers free CEs. You can take the class for free and get the CEs. And so far, we haven't had a lot of people take up that offer, but we're hoping that as more information becomes available to the need in the rural communities, we can get some of our therapists to get involved. I've really tried to focus on the new coming professionals, the APCs, recently licensed LPCs, because they're trying to build their practice. And so this is an excellent time to reach them. The negative of that is if they aren't from a farm community, they have no idea what farmers go through. And some recent studies indicate that if a farmer goes to a therapist, they have one shot to convince them that they understand the farmer's predicament and what they're dealing with, or the rural community's predicament. If they don't feel connected, they won't come back. And any of your therapists on here, or a medical doctor, or anybody who works with medicine, you know one shot generally isn't enough. The other thing we're doing is we've kind of I don't want to say partnered with the Department of Agriculture. It's not official, but the Commissioner of Agriculture has been very supportive of mental health care. He spoke at our mental health, our LPCA week, and we had an LPCA day at the Capitol, and he spoke to our members. And I have to say, I was astounded at the depth of his knowledge about mental health care. I mean, I figured he'd know a lot about crops and the cost of things and equipment and all, but I just did not know that he knew so much about mental health. So it is something that he takes very, very seriously. So those are the things that we're doing in LPCA. And I see a couple of names here of people who've really been pushing farm and rural mental health. And I do appreciate that. You do not go unrecognized. I know who my allies are in that area. But John also asked us to talk about some cases that we know of and how life is affecting farmers and some of the things they're dealing with. Well, I did not know that I was going to be that case. But besides being an LPC, I am a certified professional meat goat producer, and I got my certification through Langston University. And I raise pedigreed Boer goats. The old joke that a goat spends his entire life looking for a place to die was probably coined by a Boer goat producer. Boers are well-tempered and they're a joy to work with, but they are extremely susceptible to parasites. And in Georgia, most of the goats have become immune to the wormers that are out there. Now, I follow a worming protocol from the University of Georgia's Agriculture Department, and which generally involves I look at them daily and checking their eyes for the right color that says they need worming or they don't need worming. So anyway, I go through all of that. But a week ago, Saturday morning, I ended up in the ER for chest pain. And it's been worsening over about a month and a half. Now, I've been a cardiac patient since 2016, so that's really nothing new. But after 3 days in the hospital, every test you could possibly imagine, a cardiac procedure, I was told, go home and consult with your cardiologist and let's see where we go from here. So where we go from here is this coming Thursday, I will be having another cardiac procedure and probably 2 stents because I have what they call small vessel disease. My heart is open wide. It looks great on paper or on scan, but the small vessels are not getting fed like they're supposed to. So that's what I go in for. Where that created a problem is that I could not keep my eyes on my goats. And if you don't know anything about Boer goats, they're big. And a lot of people don't know anything about goats. So I had somebody volunteer to feed my goats, and they fed my goats. And about this past Sunday, I felt, okay, I think I'm strong enough. I'm going to go out and I'm going to just feed and look at the goats. Well, as soon as I got out there, I noticed I had 2 sick goats, and they were young goats. And young goats are particularly susceptible to illness when it's cold and it's wet. And yes, we had both. And so I immediately had my husband bring those goats in. I do my own lab work because it's really, really hard to get lab work done quickly. So I have a lab set up, and I had 1 goat with coccidia and 1 goat with barber pole worm. I have everything I needed to treat them, but the female goat was so far gone. I knew when I brought her in, she was not going to make it, but I tried. The other goat is a buck, and I have him on a heat lamp and treating him, and he's still alive. It remains to be seen whether he recovers. And goats won't eat if they're sick. So I'm out picking leaves off of the oak trees and cutting down my roses and giving them to the goats so they'll eat because they particularly like it. So then he started eating. So we're glad about that. The problem is goat vets are few and far between. So finding anybody who knows anything about a goat is going to be very difficult. I've had to take my goats a couple of times to vets when I couldn't treat them. And the vets would say, well, it looks like you're doing everything you can do. So pretty much a lot of goat producers and sheep producers treat the animals themselves. And if you're living on a farm, you know that several laws have been passed limiting the medications that you can purchase. And so I think it's really going to hurt the small time farmer who can't afford to have a vet on staff. But anyway, losing 1 goat is not a big deal to me because I have another job. I can absorb the loss. But if you're a big farmer and you're losing a lot of goats, then you're losing money. Over a lifetime, one doe can give birth to 15 to 22 offspring. And I know they can do more than that if you're sitting there as a goat person, but I do not breed my goats until they're 2, and I stop breeding them after their 8th breeding. And then they become a liability to me because they go out on a pasture and they get treated very well and they retire until they die. And so depending on the sex of the goat, one goat in this area can earn $5,000 to say $12,000 in her lifetime. Now, in some areas, like if you're in the Atlanta area, you can earn a lot more because a doe will go for $600 to $1,000. A nice buck can go for up to $10,000. And I paid a good bit for my buck because you want a really good buck for your line. So you're looking at me losing, if I were to lose my goat herd, and it's just 36 because I'm like, again, I'm a small time goat person. I'm looking at losing $100,000 in a week if they all get sick. So immediately, I'm supposed to be resting, right? Immediately, I'm like, I got to go out there and check all of the vitals on these goats, which involves handling every single goat. So I'm out there popping nitros, checking my goats. And sure enough, I had 3 goats that were affected by the same thing. And part of the problem is when it's wet, first of all, goats like to put their feet in their food. Well, if it's wet and they pick up parasites or coccidia, they jump and stand in the feed bin and then pass it on to everybody else. So I had 3 of them that I had to treat. The others were fine. And a female boar goat on my farm can average about 150. And a male goat can average 200 to 250. So these are big goats, and I can't handle them myself, particularly since I just had a cardiac procedure. So my husband, who broke his foot stepping off of his tractor into a gopher hole, is out there with me catching these goats and doing all the different things we need to do to verify the health of them. So I don't share this story to emphasize as a sob story, but something farmers deal with every day. Sometimes when it rains, it pours, and that is accurate. I had a cardiac ischemia. The next day, or the day before, my husband wrecked our truck when he had a collision with a deer. He broke his foot that same day. We had 15 guests over, and then we had the ill goat and the one goat that died. So this will be this was all over Thanksgiving weekend. So this will be a memorable Thanksgiving. At 67, I'm in the same position where John's father is. I'm getting older. I'm in poor health, at least cardiac wise, until we figure out what's going on. So I'm exploring the option of getting out of the goat business. And across Georgia, age, health, poor access to physical and mental care, and no one in the pipeline to take over is affecting Georgia's farmers, small and large. And if it's affecting Georgia's farmers, with Georgia being the number one, or agriculture being the number one industry in Georgia, then it's affecting Georgia. So this is an area I don't know how we bring attention to. John's worked at it. I've worked at it. The LPCA's worked at it. The Commissioner of Agriculture worked at it. In fact, funny story, I was standing next to him when they opened the rural farm building at the Ag Expo. And I looked at him and I said, you're responsible for this. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I don't know that I've ever known a commissioner of agriculture who has been this involved in caring for the health and the mental health, the physical and mental health of the Georgia farmer. Now, whether he started it or not, I don't know, but he's been a great ally in getting that information out. So that's my story. That's why I care about farmers, why I care about what's going on. I was happy to hear that there are subsidies coming down to the farmers, Georgia and otherwise. And I hope that that is enough to keep people farming who otherwise might say, I just can't do it anymore. I can't take the physical toll. I can't take the financial toll, and I cannot take the emotional toll. And before we say, oh, physical, financial, that's important. Emotional is too, because I was not sleeping thinking my goats were dying in the field. So that's my story. And I look forward to hearing. I know I chose Spin and I chose Will because they have background in farming and that one of their goals is to reach those populations who really need it. And it's not just farmers and agriculture, they treat other people too. And I'm looking forward to them telling us what they do. So, Sven, would you mind taking over and telling us your story?
Sure. First, I want to say, Tracy, thank you for sharing your literal heart with us. I mean, I don't have as current a farming experience as you obviously are surviving right now. I hope for all the healing for your husband's foot and your heart and the goats
Thank you.
too, as many of them as needed.
Yeah, thank you.
Because yeah, all too often it becomes incredibly personal. These massive categories that we talk about as therapists. So I'll start at the end of the journey that I'm going to try to talk everybody through, so that you know that I arrived where I meant to. Often as a mental health counselor up here in Blairsville, which is Northeast Georgia, almost in North Carolina, I work with all my clients on taking care of the fundamentals. And so I've tried to simplify it down to just 6 things. In the last 24 hours, how satisfied are you with water, friends, food, calm, clean, and sweat? And that's often what I'll start with a client. We'll work through those things. I mentioned this because that's where we'll end up, and we'll talk about AgriSafe and a current client that I have. But remember that water, friends, food, calm, clean, sweat. We're going to come back to that. When I was 13 years old, I lived in upstate New York. My dad was stationed at Fort Drum. He was in the Signal Corps. And for one of the summers when I was 13, my mom sent me out to a Mennonite dairy farm to work for a couple of months with the Stan Horning and his family. I expected it to be physically strenuous, but I didn't expect it to give me some of the best life lessons. For example, one day when I was painting a garage door that he had assigned me to do, his daughter Angela came out, and I had a little crush on her. She was nice. She was pretty. And she said, "Hey, can you help me throw some hay bales in the loft?" And I was standing there with, a wet paintbrush, and I was thinking like, yeah, I'd rather do that. So I put the paintbrush down and I went and threw some hay bales with her. And then we heard her dad calling, and we were like, all right, we ran back downstairs and through all the stalls. And he was standing there with the wet paintbrush in his hand. He was like, "Sven, where's the job? Where's this done?" And in his long lecture that he then gave to me about walking away from a job that I hadn't finished, I grabbed this phrase that he kept repeating, which was finish what you start. Don't be distracted. Don't run away from something just because it's irritating or because it's not, he didn't know, but it's not as cute as his daughter. Finish what you start. Get this thing and follow it through. And that has really stuck with me. In my training as a mental health counselor, in my music as a worship music minister, there's been so many times that I've needed to go back to that simple advice that was drilled into me very young. Finish what you start. Recently, some of those trainings from AgriSafe and so on have been things like the podcast that I hope you all have listened to, Talking Total Farmer Health, where they talk about all the different types of challenges and health issues. And most of them aren't exactly relevant to licensed professional counseling, but they're incredibly interesting with the different people they have on. So I hope as you're listening to this, you go and try out some of those podcasts too, because similar to that farm response training that we took as LPCs, they often emphasize that farmers are facing, and this is their interdisciplinary model. Farmers are facing challenges in social issues, cognition, finances, weather, hazards, healthcare, spirituality, fitness, diet, and sleep. So when, as an LPC, I'm trying to meet with someone who was just yelling at a kid for not painting the garage door, but is also considering whether or not his farm is going to make it, someone who's facing physical injury and lack of sleep, it becomes really, really important to emphasize what's happening now. Currently, one of my clients is a farmer who provides beef and honey and produce to local restaurants. And when he has time to come in for a session, it's about once a month, and he processes life with me, what it's like now on the farm, not just when I was 13, but now. He speaks often about the surprises that he's had to weather, mostly at how this lifestyle that he loves, making food that he knows is healthy and essential, is only affordable because he also works remotely in IT. His family is working so hard to keep not just the farm, but their kids educated and all these other issues managed, that he comes in often to talk about the surprise. Because as you would if you were talking to a therapist, he comes in and he talks about a human-sized range of relatable challenges, parental issues, marital issues, faith issues, even trauma history, and the current stress. In many ways, he's one of my favorite teachers because I'm bringing mental health awareness and he is living out what mental health can give or take away from you. So I hope that together, like me at 13 and since then, and this client of mine who's trying to live out these challenges of finances and every other realm of human experience, I hope we all try to live out that simple advice that Stan Horning gave me, which was finish what you start. Start something worth doing, see it all the way through. And here we go, arriving at the end. Remember that along the way, every 24 hours, you got to keep track of your own water. Am I drinking enough water? Am I adapting to what's happening? Am I drinking not just the change of what's the chaos that's happening around me, but am I adapting to what's happening now, just like water conforms to its bowl? Do I have the right amount of friends with me? Am I able to offer friendship? Am I able to accept it from others? Am I doing my own self-care? Am I being my own best friend? Am I eating the right food? Am I providing good food for others? If in the last 24 hours, I feel like I can be content with Water Friends food, Calm Clean Sweat, it's very likely that I'm going to be able to show up for my families, for my farm, for my IT job, whatever it takes. And that's something that I'm very honored to keep doing with people, is to be that LPC who sits and listens. And then we work through, maybe there's a strategy, maybe there's a diagnosis or a medication that can help support that pursuit. But it's very simply daily, this motivational thing that says we got to keep showing up. We got to keep doing what it takes to finish what we started. So I'll pass it on, but thank you for letting me join.
Thank you, Sven. I'm going to remind everybody who's not heard this, but if you've ever heard Commissioner Tyler Harper speak, he said he grew up on a farm and there was one motto that everybody adhered to. John could probably speak it out loud. He said, if you broke it, you fix it. And that mentality is what makes it hard for farmers to ask for help. But that was excellent. Thank you so much. So now we're going to turn it over to Dr. Will Carroll, and you can tell us about your experience working with various communities.
Sure. I don't know that you guys want to hear my farm stories, but I was born in Fitzgerald, Georgia. My family farm is still there, still growing peanuts, pine trees. People will ask, where is that at? And I'm like, well, if you turn off the interstate, you'll drive through pine trees and more pine trees, and you'll eventually get there. But yeah, Sven, when I was 13 working the farm, there were no pretty girls. It was just a hog stall, and it had to be cleaned out. And the story I love telling people is my grandfather put me to work at 12 driving something. It was the early 90s. Nobody cared if a 12-year-old was driving from farm to farm. But I worked very hard that year to make $150 to buy a Nintendo. And it was one of those things where even me, my cousins, my little brother, we just worked the farm. We didn't know any different. We had no concept of people going to town to get a job, so to speak. I am the sixth William Carroll in a very long line of farmers, and I'm a sixth generation farmer. I could take you to the family farm right now. I was just there last week. But it was one of those things where I had the chance that nobody before me had, and that was to go to college. I went to the local college called ABAC. If any of you are from South Georgia, you know ABAC, where I met my wife. We were told when we got there by a guy named Mike Chasen that the ratio was 4 guys to every 1 girl. The girls loved that. The guys hated that. But I was one of those guys who found a wife there regardless. But yeah, going from a farm in Fitzgerald, Georgia, down to Tifton to an ag college, that was life for me. That was normal. And I studied psychology there, but I didn't think anything any different about, the people in the big city of Valdosta, so to speak. Which I know it probably sounds funny to people closer to Atlanta that Valdosta is big, but it was a way of life. Sunday morning, we'd go to church and pray for rain. And Monday morning, we'd go back out there and plow another field. Um, us, we'd be driving a little Ford mowing cotton stalks or whatever it was. Um, I love taking my kids down there and pointing out the things, and then I remember how much work it was to plow that field, uh, because it was a lot of work. And a lot of people do what I do. A lot of my generation, I'm 45, so Gen X, a lot of my generation left the farm. Like it's still there. My uncles still plow it. My uncles are 68 and 70. They still work the farm. Uh, but my generation stepped away. And they stepped away for the reasons Tracy has talked about already. There was so much stress, so much uncertainty, so much more options in the big city of Atlanta. And I left South Georgia in '08 because of the economic downturn. A lot of people did. Looking for work, I had to go to a bigger city. And I left home, and that was not fun. Thankfully, it's still there for me to go back to. But a lot of times, farmers, men that ride the tractors, they don't feel like they can get away. They don't feel like there is an option. They don't feel like there's another job. And I look at my uncles and I think this is their life. After 68 years, this is what they know. They love it, yes. And they'll show up and they'll hand you a 5 gallon bucket of peanuts uh, because they want to give back, but it's all they know. And us as professionals looking back, one generation back, and saying, how can I be a blessing to them? How can I minister? How can I be a therapist, I guess, to these people? And I say all that because I had an experience yesterday where a man was talking to me about loneliness. And if you've ever ridden the tractor for 8 hours, it's busy work. Like you feel busy, like you're working, you're actively doing something. But there is that loneliness that comes. And I could only imagine for my uncles what that's like getting off the tractor at nightfall and going home to my aunts and just being so happy to be with people. We live in a culture today in 2025 where loneliness seems to be more rampant than ever. And I'll be the first to say that this doesn't help. This does nobody any good when it comes to that loneliness because we want a physical connection. This digital connection just doesn't satisfy. It's not enough. It's like eating donuts. It's just not enough. And so something I saw as I talked to this man yesterday was this overwhelming feeling of loneliness. Like I'm out here by myself, so to speak. And he talked about meeting other people who shared that loneliness and what do we do to meet our need for companionship or connection. And I think us as therapists working in rural areas, we have a unique opportunity to look at uh, professionals in whatever field, including agriculture, and help them see that it's not enough to just have the latest and greatest drone helping them map their field or whatever. It's important to be able to step away and make genuine connections with their community. Yes, with their spouse, yes, with their kids, yes, with their church, yes, with other professionals. But we as therapists can help them build a different kind of connection. I say that because the man I spoke to, he was one of 7 kids, grew up on a farm. His parents were each one of 9 kids who grew up on a farm. It's crazy to think about these numbers. There were always people. There was always people. And then here at the end of his career, it doesn't feel like there's anyone there to connect with. And sure, he has kids and grandkids and so on, but he still feels that loneliness, and the people around him still feel that loneliness. And I think again, as we as professionals have an opportunity here to step into that role and help the farmer make connections, make like genuine connections with somebody more than just a guy who he's selling peanuts to. I make a lot of allusions to peanuts and cotton. Sorry about that. That's what we grew, and occasionally pine trees. But but it's an interesting thing being a therapist, stepping away from the farm and then coming back and seeing what life was like in the '90s and even '80s, and realizing yes, times have changed, but there's opportunity there. There's opportunity for us to serve, to help, to be what say my grandfather's generation didn't have. I say that because my grandfather, he would tell this story. He would talk about going to war and coming home. And he would say the summer before he left for war, they plowed the field with a mule. And the summer he came back from war, they plowed the field with a tractor for the first time. And what had really happened in our culture was that we sent our young men, our 18-year-olds like my grandfather, to war, and we taught them how to use machines. We taught them how to use tractors and motor graders, and they brought all that knowledge back with them. And so when he came back to Little Fitzgerald, Georgia, he came back with the ability to drive, and he was able to go, to a nearby town, up to Macon, over to Albany, buy a tractor, bring it back, and actually use it. Things changed for his generation for the better, for the so much better. And that for him was such a turning point in his life, in his career as a farmer. We're at a different place with technology, and the turn may not be so beneficial. And I say that because my fear is that farmers spend more time with this than they do with people, than they do with their sons teaching them to farm. I hate to get off on tangents like that, but it's just such a poignant story when I think about that generation and then the next generation and then our generation today and what the future of farming looks like in Georgia. Um, Tracy, I almost want to stop and say, hey, do you have any questions? I feel like I talk about myself too much. But yeah, I do appreciate y'all having me and letting me speak about how we as LPCs are helping those in rural areas, especially in the agricultural field.
Thank
Can I
you.
take questions?
Yeah, I'm going to open it up for discussion
Sure,
and questions in just a moment. I do want to point out a couple of things,
sure.
just some resources and also some information. Tracy was exactly right about Commissioner Tyler Harper of the Department of Ag. He really has been a leading voice in terms of that discussion about farm stress and mental health, and has been tremendously supportive to organizations like LPCA. He's been a great partner and sponsor really of GAWA, the Georgia Agricultural Wellness Alliance that I'm director of. And I want to mention a couple of things. Also, we have, I think, the greatest opportunity to move this discussion forward because of all the great organizations that are part of this, but also because not only is Commissioner Harper, I mean, Commissioner Harper of the Department of Ag, a farmer and from a generational farm family, Commissioner Kevin Tanner of the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities is a sixth generation poultry farmer from Northeast Georgia. And so they partner in great ways and keep this conversation going in their realms. And I just appreciate both of them so much and what their organizations are doing, their agencies are doing. Um, and I did put in the chat a link to the the farm stress study that came out of the Georgia Rural Health Innovation Center that I'm part of, and the Georgia Foundation for Ag. This study in 2022, and I thought of this, not that I don't think of it all the time, but Will mentioned the loneliness. And that was one of the stressors and one of the things that were impactors upon the mental health of the farmers. And so that link is in there. If you haven't read that study and haven't looked at the statistics in that, and especially the way they broke it down by some of the demographics, it's pretty amazing in not a great way, right? And so, in the aftermath of that, and also some of the research that came out of UGA as well, Dr. Anna Chayette, particularly Dr. Diane Bale, some other folks at UGA, were all working in this field, and they've had some others in the College of Public Health. But in the aftermath of these studies, Mercer and the Rural Health Innovation Center there at the School of Medicine, along with UGA Extension, the Department of Behavioral Health, the Department of Agriculture, Georgia Farm Bureau, Georgia Foundation for Agriculture, they all got together and said we all are concerned about this. We need to work together, and they formed GAWA. So our job, our mission is to create these networks of in support of farm stress and well-being. And so I appreciate organizations like this. I see Dean Tays is here from UGA Extension, also and Glenda Grant, who is my boss at the Rural Health Innovation Center, and they've just started a new podcast called Rural Georgia Voices. So I please look for that podcast because it's some great discussion. But I do want to thank you all so much for this information. I do have a question before we open it up. So you mentioned, and this was Sven. You mentioned, because I want to get this right. Let me go to my note here and make sure I have this. So you mentioned water, friends, food.
Yeah.
Calm,
Mhm.
and sweat, but between calm
Clean.
and sweat, there was something else. What was the
Calm, clean, and sweat.
Clean? Okay.
So calm might be
Yeah.
about getting the right amount of sleep. It might be about taking a pause in a moment itself. Clean is definitely about cleaning up yourself, like your own speech and spirit, but also your environment. And sweat can be exercise. It can be doing good work. It can be creation too, art, music. Basically, if you're checking those boxes off every 24 hours, you're feeling pretty much like at least a baseline of yourself.
Yeah, that's so interesting, and I'm definitely going to steal that with attribution from you, Sven. So, and I appreciate it, and it's so great to have folks from the LPCA community that that have this agricultural background because it's so important that we have these different voices from providers and faith leaders, our educators that are on here with us today, and agribusinesses, all of that are just so important to have as part of this conversation. So with that, I'm going to open it up for discussion and other comments. Oh, I did want to mention AgriSafe, who usually has some folks here on this with us today. They said they couldn't attend, but Tracy mentioned the farm response training, which are CEU credits to help providers understand how to better serve the farm community. They do have still seats available, and the Department of Agriculture in Georgia has covered the cost of those seats. So she asked me to remind everyone that those seats are available, particularly to this group. So thank you for that. So I'm going to open it up for discussion, and I know some of you also have practices and may want to talk about some of your insights. But I'm so excited about this discussion today.
John,
I have a question.
I'm sorry. Was that you, John? No. Who? I'm sorry. Who said they had a question?
Hey, this is Keely Rowland.
Hey, Keely.
Hey, so I had a question. I'm kind of here in a twofold capacity. My husband and I, we have a small farm in central Georgia, but I'm also LCSW with a private practice. And I'm kind of trying to expand my practice to reach some of the population that we're kind of discussing here. And I was wondering if any of the speakers today had suggestions or strategies for how to reach the agricultural community in my area.
Tracy, do you want to take the lead on that one? Because there's so many answers to that. You're still muted though. As she's unmuting real quick, I will say that as much as you can connect with the parents of other kids along with yours, the local church, the immediate resources in the area, even the local Department of Behavioral Health, it is amazing how many people are desperate to connect their community with good mental health providers. So as a licensed clinical social worker, you have so much to offer that even just walking into an office, even a police station, and handing them your card and saying, hey, send me people who are dealing with, and then list off a specialty or two. It is unreal how much relief you will sometimes see in their faces.
I would add a couple of things. One, if you do the farm response, I was talking to Commissioner Harper about having a referral list of who you can contact who's been trained to work with farmers. But another area is find your Future Farmers of America chapter or your young farmers. And I think what you'll find when you go into young farmers that most of us are not young anymore. And but those are resources that if you do a very short pitch that this is my training and I live on a farm and I'm available, I think word of mouth will get you probably overbooked.
Mhm. Yeah, my primary has always been physicians, primary care people. Um, Fitzgerald had two primary care providers, so it was easy to visit both of them or all of them. But yeah, primary care providers has always been great. You know, any other medical profession, again, go down there, hand out business cards. The office I'm sitting in right now, there's a primary care right below me, and it's just like walk down there, hand them some business cards, and you know, give that little 30-second spiel about this is what I do, this is my specialty, this is how I can help. They're always grateful to have referral sources.
Thank you all so much. The training that you spoke of, Ms. Pace, through AgriStress, how would someone go about accessing that?
Well, you can access it through the LPCA website, but there may be somebody here that knows of another way to access it. And you don't just get to go free. You have to in our case, we have to show our credentials. John, do you know how they
Yeah,
access that?
I think there's still a link on the Department of Agricultural website for that, but you can also go to the AgriSafe website, and they have a link for that, and they talk about which states have that cost covered. So you can go on there and do that. It will. My understanding is that when you first go in, it's going to tell you the cost and all that. But when you put in the necessary information to show that you're from a state that has it covered, then it doesn't. It won't charge you that to register. Now, I will say this: if you register, this is very important that you go ahead and do that training as soon as possible, because one of the issues that they are kind of up against is because they've guaranteed a number of seats. Um, there's a lot of people who register for it and then don't follow through with the training to complete it. And so it's that situation where they don't really know how many seats they really have left because, of that kind of reservation. So, uh, Michael asked the question in the chat. Michael Dykes from the Georgia Rural Health Innovation Center, who just asked if there are um, excuse me, community resource guides for farmers. And so I think, Michael, there's a lot of information. We're certainly trying to build our resource on the gafarmstress.org website. But if you go out and look at resources on the national level, a lot of states are putting information out there on their website. So if you do a search on that, there's some pretty good guides out there. I think Fort Valley State and UGA Extensions have done some things, resources, and then of course our own resources here at GRIC. So there are out there, and more every day. So
I'm going to drop an extra
Mike.
plug in here too. There's an organization called Georgia Family Connection. They have a lot of county specific offices across the state, and they've been wonderful for helping me find other local providers. So, Georgia Family Connection. I can put their link in there too.
Yeah. And they have a network in pretty much every county. So
Yeah.
they do a nice job of that. And we're starting to do some partnerships with them as well.
It's not just for
Um,
farmers, but it's community based.
right. And the you mentioned the young farmers. I've uh, been doing more and more of programs for the Young Farmers Association. As Tracy said, they're they're when you go into the room, if you're not familiar with them, the first thing you'll notice is they're not that young. They have pretty much all generations covered. And one of the things that I certainly thought about when I went into this was talking to them and being from that community is I wonder how, particularly how some of the older farmers are going to react to this message about mental health and stress and that sort of thing because they're pretty infamous, kind of like the military, for being self-reliant. You don't whine, you don't tend to other people's business, and you don't show weakness. So there is some of that. But when I've done these talks, quite often, uh, it has been some of the older and oldest farmers in the group that say, you know what? It's about time we talked about this. And so it's the more that we obviously normalize that conversation, which I know is part of all of our missions, the more it becomes it almost gives folks the opportunity to finally discuss this. And I do want to mention we're going to be bringing in Comet training soon, which is a conversational training for it's by the ag community for the ag community out of the Midwest, particularly came out of Colorado State University and the High Plains Research Network. But we're going to start bringing in train the trainer opportunities for that and really teaches people how to have conversations with their friends, neighbor, families that are they're about whom they're worried, right? And like I said, it's very ag oriented. It fits, I think. So just more on that and be looking for that later. I think it's a great community resource. Okay, I'm going to just for Mark and some others who have mentioned things in the chat. Do you want to just talk about that real quick and make sure folks see that?
Yeah, so a lot of times, like you were saying, farmers have their own language, like veterans have their own language. So I'm on the more on the veteran side of being able to do that. But my father-in-law is cat has, cattle farmer, and uh, I always, especially when you look at, he's in Flovilla, Georgia, and connecting with people. They all kind of, so if you go and talk and kind of get involved in the community a little bit, you're more likely for people to trust. And that old adage, a farmer who comes into the ER willingly is in bad shape. If they're walking it, I was always told throw dirt on it. It'll heal. It'll be fine. So the other stuff that comes through is you have to connect with them on a human level or connect with somebody in there because a lot of times they're small communities and they talk and trust, and farmers sometimes have to rely on each other. So if you have a good reputation, you're more likely to get them in. So before COVID, I'd have people driving 2 hours just to come to me. And I live in Macon, but I would have people coming from all over the farming area just to come and see me. And I would say one positive thing from COVID is now will use telehealth, so they don't have to waste all that gas money now. They can just and they'll come more regularly. Whereas before, if something happens, so also if you look on community boards dealing with farmers as well and put information out there, sometimes that helps people feel like they can come to you as well.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Mark, Glenda mentioned echoed that the primary care providers are a great connection, Keely. So echoed that sentiment as well that Sven also and Will talked about, I think.
They're
Okay.
generational
Other.
doctors. You like my kid's pediatrician was their mother's pediatrician. So sometimes those doctors are family doctors for multiple generations too.
Yeah, great. Any other comments? We've got about 4 more minutes before we've got to end up. So, other comments? I want to put in a plug. John Anderson's on here. John does an amazing job with community resiliency model training, the stress management tools training. And she and I are looking to do some of those together. So, if somebody would like to do that, or like to have us come to a community, we certainly can do that. And other comments,
John,
questions, discussion? Yeah,
I'd
Tracy.
like to add one of the things that some recent research showed up was that we tend to think of farmers as being traditionally male, but if a male farmer shows up, it's probably because a female in his life pushed him to do it. So being at your women's clubs, church, whatever's, anywhere where there's a group of women where like we have a quilting bee, people still have that, and anywhere like that, you can reach out and find people and give them the information, and they will go home and work on their farmer husband.
Yep. I also want to remember, March 12th, Thursday, March 12th is the 2026 Georgia Farm Stress Summit. And it'll be at Fort Valley State's Pettigrew Family Center. It's going to be we're busy putting the touches on the schedule for that, but we are planning on having a session offering CEUs for providers, and specifically a breakout session for providers in there to talk about this issue. So we hope that there'll be a lot of LPCA members, that not only are the credits going to be free, you also, your attendance and lunch and refreshments are all provided that day. So put that on your calendar. We're finishing the save the date now, and we're going to get that out soon. Other comments, questions before we go? I want to thank our speakers so much for doing this. It's so important. We will be posting this recording on our website soon. And so if you'd like to access it and send somebody that link that you think needs to hear this discussion, please do. All right. Any other comments? Questions? Again, just appreciate everybody being here. We do this this virtual meeting every second Tuesday at noon each month, and we move it around and do some different topics. So this one is long overdue, and again, I want to thank Tracy, Sven, and Will all for their time and effort, and what the association is doing in general. And for those of you that are out practicing in our communities, thank you so much. All right. Well, everybody have a good day. And we will, Glenda sent the Farm Stress Summit save the dates in the chat. So if you want to click on that real quick before I hit end, there's your opportunity. And again, that's March 12th, Thursday, March 12th, 2026 in Fort Valley. So thanks, everybody. Have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and all the holidays that you celebrate. We hope that you enjoy them so much. Take care.